Today we are going to be describing, identifying and demonstrating planes of movement.
Firstly, let's discuss what we mean by planes of movement. Planes of movement break the body down into three dimensions that are known as frontal, transverse and sagittal. The frontal plane is a splitting of the body from the side, and an example of movement that occurs in the frontal plane would be our arms and legs during the exercise movement known as star jumps. The transverse plane is where the body is split horizontally, and an example of movement that happens in the transverse plane would be twisting or rotational movements. Finally, the sagittal plane is where the body is split vertically down the middle. Movements that occur in this plane would be front to back. Examples could be walking, pulling, pushing, or even squatting.
The axis of movement is the line around on which an object rotates. The three axes are mediolateral, anterior-posterior and longitudinal. The mediolateral axis runs horizontally through the transverse plane but corresponds to the movement along the sagittal plane. The anterior-posterior axis runs horizontally through the side of the body and corresponds to the movement along the frontal plane. Finally, the longitudinal axis runs vertically down the middle of the body. These movements correspond with the transverse plane.
Within these axes and planes, the body has a range of movements which occur called cardinal planes. We will now demonstrate each cardinal plane and reference which axis and plane these movements are related to. Flexion, extension. These occur along the sagittal plane and the mediolateral axes. Another movement that performed the same would be dorsiflexion, plantarflexion, abduction, or adduction. These movements occur along the frontal plane. Abduction, adduction. These movements occur in the frontal plane and correspond with the anterior-posterior axis. Other movements that relate are elevation, depression, inversion, eversion, supination, and pronation. Rotation, circumduction. These all happen in the transverse plane and correspond with the longitudinal axis.
There are many ranges of movement that can be identified through planes and axes. This helps us understand and analyse athletes better when improving performance. Thank you for listening and good night.